We love a good success story, especially the kind where someone goes from broke to billionaire, armed with nothing but hustle, positive thinking, and a well-lit Instagram account. If I can do it, they say, so can you. It sounds empowering until you look closer, because behind every self-made success is a long list of unmentioned variables: inherited privilege, timing, algorithm luck, unpaid interns, maybe a trust fund or two. But hey, don't ruin the narrative. In today's world, the idea of ethical wealth is sold like a spiritual achievement. Grind hard, stay humble, and manifest that Tesla. It's not just business, it's virtue. But what if this is less motivation, more manipulation? What if the self-help industry, the influencer gurus, the millionaire coaches are selling a dream that only works for the few and blames the rest for not trying hard enough? This video isn't here to tell you not to try. It's here to ask, what game are you actually playing? And who wrote the rules? The myth of the self-made man, bootstraps and blind spots. The self-made man is the modern saint. You see him everywhere, in motivational videos, business podcasts, glossy LinkedIn posts. He built himself from nothing, they say. He rose above, no handouts, just grit, discipline, and maybe a little morning cold plunge. But if you look closely, the story starts to crack. Because nothing rarely means nothing. It often means something that just looks like nothing to the person who had it. The idea that anyone can rise purely on their own efforts is seductive. It flatters our ego and blames our struggle on laziness. It tells you that your failures are personal and your success is moral. If you're rich, it's because you earned it. If you're poor, it's because you didn't want it badly enough. Simple, convenient, dangerous. Let's be honest, no one is truly self-made. You were born into a society with systems you didn't create, rules you didn't write, and conditions you couldn't control. Your work ethic was shaped by your environment, your values by your culture, and your opportunities by timing, geography, and often, pure luck. Even Jeff Bezos had parents who invested hundreds of thousands into his little online bookstore. Even the most iconic rags to riches stories, when examined, reveal safety nets, connections, or just being in the right place at the right moment. But the myth persists because it serves the system. If success is purely individual, then failure is too. No need to address structural inequality, systemic bias, or generational poverty. It's easier to believe that the poor just aren't thinking big or haven't read enough productivity books. It keeps the privileged comfortable and the struggling ashamed. This myth is also great for selling stuff. If you believe you're just one mindset shift away from making it big, you'll keep buying the courses, the coaching, the personal development books that promise to unlock your hidden potential. You won't question whether the game is rigged, you'll just blame yourself for not playing it better. And that's where the damage is done. Because the myth doesn't just distort reality, it isolates people. If you fail, it's your fault. If you struggle, keep it quiet. Everyone else is rising. Why aren't you? So instead of community, you get competition. Instead of solidarity, shame. Instead of honest reflection, performance. But here's the twist. The people who cling most tightly to the self-made narrative are often the ones most afraid to admit how much help they had. Because if they did, their success would feel a little less shiny, a little more human. And that's uncomfortable. But maybe, just maybe, it's more honest. Because the truth is, we're all made. By our families, our schools, our cities, our cultures, our circumstances. Some of us start with a head start, some with a backpack full of bricks. Pretending otherwise isn't noble, it's delusional. So what's the alternative? We don't have to throw away ambition or stop celebrating effort, but we do have to stop lying about the playing field. We have to stop measuring worth by outcome alone. We have to start seeing success not as a solo victory lap, but as a reflection of both individual drive and collective influence. Because maybe the real strength isn't in pretending you did it all alone, but in acknowledging who helped you, what shaped you, and how much of your life is a gift you didn't earn. Not to feel guilty, but to feel grounded, humble, and maybe a little more connected to everyone else still climbing, some with elevators, some with ladders, some with nothing but scraped hands and borrowed hope. Toxic positivity and the hustle trap. Just stay positive, work harder, grind now, shine later. You've seen the quotes, probably printed in bold on a black background with a lion, a private jet, or a dude lifting weights. This is the language of hustle culture, where your value is measured in hours worked, your optimism must be permanent, and rest is something only losers do. It sells itself as empowerment, but let's be honest, it's a polite way of telling you to shut up and keep moving. Toxic positivity is the emotional engine of hustle culture. It doesn't just ask you to work, it demands that you smile while doing it. It tells you that pain is weakness, doubt is laziness, and burnout is a badge of honor. Got anxiety? Visualize your goals harder. Exhausted? That just means you're outworking the competition. You're not allowed to feel overwhelmed, only one step away from a breakthrough. It sounds inspiring until you realize it's gaslighting with a smile. This mindset confuses productivity with purpose. It reduces life to a series of checklists and morning routines, as if waking up at 5 a.m., meditating, journaling, lifting, fasting, goal setting, and gratitude logging before 7 a.m. will magically turn you into a billionaire monk. But behind all the glamorized morning routines is a deep insecurity. The fear that if you stop moving, everything will fall apart, including your identity. Hustle culture pretends to be about ambition, but it's really about avoidance. The constant busyness keeps you from asking hard questions, like why am I doing all this? Who benefits from this pace? Or am I building a life, or just building content about one? It trades depth for motion, clarity for momentum, rest for branding, and of course, it's all wrapped in moral language. The hard worker is virtuous, the slow one is weak. The person who prioritizes family, mental health, or stillness, undisciplined. It's no longer enough to do your job. You must rise and grind, crush it, and dominate. Failure to perform at this level isn't just seen as a practical problem, it's treated like a moral failing. This is how capitalism spiritualizes itself. It doesn't just exploit your labor, it recruits your soul. It makes you believe that every hour you're not working is a wasted opportunity. That your dreams are expiring while you sleep. That if you're not constantly growing, scaling, monetizing, you're dying. It doesn't matter if you're miserable as long as you look productive. And here's the kicker. This hustle religion is sold by people who often aren't hustling anymore. The influencers in beach mansions telling you to grind harder are living off passive income. The personal development guru preaching nonstop action has an assistant managing their schedule. You, meanwhile, are trying to hit 6 figures while editing reels at midnight and drinking cold brew like it's medicine. The truth is, life isn't meant to be a productivity contest. You are not a machine. You are not a brand. You are not a business plan. You are a human being. And that means you need time to do nothing. To rest without guilt. To question your direction. To be slow, soft, uncertain. Those aren't signs of failure. They're signs that you're alive. Hustle culture doesn't want you to pause, because stillness leads to awareness, and awareness is dangerous to systems built on mindless output. The moment you stop and ask, is this worth it, is the moment you start stepping out of the trap. And that's when you realize, real power isn't in endless motion. It's in knowing when to move and when to stop. So maybe you don't need another motivational quote. Maybe you need permission to rest, to breathe, to be average today and amazing tomorrow, to remember that life isn't a race, it's a rhythm. And no one gets to own your pace but you. Influencer culture. Morality is marketing. Influencers used to sell products. Now they sell purpose. The new generation of online icons isn't just showing you what to wear or which smoothie to blend. They're teaching you how to live. They're life coaches, spiritual guides, productivity experts, philosophers with ring lights. They aren't just promoting a lifestyle, they're promoting themselves as the moral blueprint for success. And in this economy, morality is content. Welcome to the age of virtue signaling as a business model, where your morning routine becomes a sermon, where your abs are proof of discipline, where your hustle is your holiness, where every act of self-care, every success, every trauma you've ever overcome becomes part of your personal brand. And if you're not documenting your transformation, did you even grow? Influencer culture doesn't just tell you what to buy, it tells you who to be. It turns personal habits into universal truths. It takes subjective life choices and repackages them as divine wisdom. Wake up early, you're enlightened. Quit your 9-to-5, you're liberated. Built a 6-figure income from your laptop in Bali, you're basically a prophet. Meanwhile, the rest of us are just trying to get through Monday without collapsing from the weight of our unread emails and unresolved childhood trauma. What's dangerous isn't just the oversimplification, it's the moral framing. Influencer culture thrives on the idea that success is a result of character. Not timing, not connections, not market conditions, just you, your mindset, your choices, your vibe. And if you're not where you want to be, the implication is clear. It's because you haven't done the work. You haven't healed enough, manifested enough, journaled enough. You're spiritually lazy. It's a seductive trap. Because who doesn't want to feel empowered? Who doesn't want to believe that their fate is entirely in their hands? But the flip side of this fantasy is toxic. It turns every struggle into a personal failure, every disadvantage into a lack of mindset, every systemic injustice into a branding opportunity. Your burnout isn't a structural problem, it's a content gap. Even worse, influencer culture commodifies authenticity. Vulnerability is curated. Mental health is aestheticized. Your trauma becomes a hook for engagement. I used to be broke, depressed, and lost until I found my truth, launched my program, and made $100 in 30 days. Swipe up for healing. It's not that these people are lying. It's that they're selling real emotions in ways that serve a very polished narrative. And that narrative always ends with you buying something. Of course, not all influencers are bad people. Many genuinely want to help. Some even succeed in doing so. But the system rewards performance, not truth. It amplifies those who play the algorithm's game. It turns life into a stage, and the most marketable morals always win. Compassion becomes content, discipline becomes dominance, wisdom becomes a funnel. And slowly you stop asking, what do I believe, and start asking, how do I frame this? You stop being a person and start being a persona. You're always on, always editing, always packaging your life in digestible pieces for invisible eyes. And when your morality becomes marketing, even your values become a pitch. So where do we go from here? Maybe it starts with refusing to moralize success, with remembering that the most valuable parts of being human, doubt, messiness, contradiction, don't make great posts. Maybe real wisdom isn't always photogenic. Maybe real integrity can't be monetized. And maybe the person who doesn't post every step of their journey isn't behind. They're just living it. Because morality isn't a brand. It's how you treat people when no one's watching. It's the values you live when there's nothing to gain. And in a world addicted to visibility, maybe the most radical act is to be quietly, stubbornly human, without turning it into a hashtag. When self-help becomes blame shifting. Self-help began with good intentions. Read a little more, think a little deeper, take responsibility for your own growth, solid advice in theory. The promise was empowerment. You don't need to wait for the world to change. You can start with yourself. But somewhere along the line, it shifted. What started as encouragement quietly morphed into accusation. Suddenly, every problem became a mindset issue. Every failure was reframed as your fault. And healing became yet another form of performance. This is where self-help turns sour. Not when it invites reflection, but when it erases context. When it tells someone crushed by medical debt to just rewire your money mindset. When it tells the burnt-out single parent, you attract what you are. When it tells the trauma survivor, your energy creates your reality. It sounds empowering, but it's a subtle form of blame. A sugar-coated way of saying, if your life is hard, it's because you haven't grown enough. That's the bait and switch of the modern self-help movement. It takes systemic issues, inequality, healthcare, racism, burnout, and turns them into individual moral puzzles. Struggling? That's because you're out of alignment. Depressed? You're not visualizing clearly enough. Poor? You need a stronger morning routine. Never mind the external forces. It's all you. Which is strange, because if it's always you, then what exactly are we calling a society? Self-help at its worst becomes a kind of spiritual gaslighting. It uses the language of accountability to enforce guilt. You didn't manifest your dream job? Try harder. You feel stuck? Shift your vibration. It doesn't matter if the system is broken. Your vibe should rise above it. It's a utopia of radical individualism where everything is your responsibility and nothing is your fault. And somehow, it still manages to sell you a course at the end. Of course, reflection and ownership are important. We all have blind spots. We all make choices that don't serve us. But when personal development is disconnected from structural awareness, it stops being empowering and becomes punishing. You internalize failure as weakness. You stop asking, "What's wrong with this system?" and start obsessing over what's wrong with me. And here's the irony. The more you try to fix yourself according to this logic, the more you disconnect from yourself. You perform healing instead of feeling. You hustle for peace. You turn self-love into a task. Your journal becomes a battleground. Your affirmations become apologies. And slowly, you lose the thing self-help was supposed to give you: agency. The truth is, you can't meditate your way out of structural exploitation. You can't manifest your way out of generational trauma. And you can't solve a broken system with better posture and a vision board. Personal growth matters, but it isn't everything. And when it pretends to be, it becomes another tool of oppression dressed up as self-care. So what's the alternative? Maybe it's humble self-help. The kind that says, yes, you can grow, but not in a vacuum. Yes, your habits matter, but so do your conditions. Yes, healing is your responsibility, but it isn't your fault. You are not broken. You're just human, in a world that often demands too much and gives too little. The work isn't to blame yourself for that. The work is to grow gently with context. Because you deserve more than a life of constant optimization. You deserve rest, compassion, structure, community. Not just self-improvement, but self-acceptance, even in progress. Especially in progress. Is ethical wealth even possible in a rigged system? Let's be honest, the phrase ethical wealth sounds beautiful, responsible, grounded, noble even. You picture a successful person who made their money without hurting anyone, who gives back, who meditates before meetings and funds clean water projects. The dream, right? But here's the uncomfortable question. In a system built on inequality, is it even possible to get rich without stepping on someone, directly or indirectly? Most wealth doesn't come from hard work alone. It comes from ownership, leverage, inherited opportunity, or access to resources others don't have. It comes from investments that benefit from underpaid labor, from industries that externalize harm, from supply chains no one wants to look too closely at. You might pay your team well, but where did your tech stack come from? You might donate to charity, but how many people were underinsured so your health company could thrive? At some point, the system makes you complicit, not because you're evil, just because you're in it. That's the paradox. The more money you accumulate, the harder it becomes to stay clean. Every scalable success often depends on structures that are not ethical at scale. Passive income, often built on someone else's active exhaustion. High margins, often the result of someone else being underpaid. Capitalism rewards efficiency, not morality. And ethics, when they slow down profit, usually get cut. And yet, we cling to the idea of ethical wealth like it's a spiritual badge. We want to believe we're the good ones, that we earned it, that we give back, that we're not that kind of rich. But the system doesn't really care how mindful you are. It cares what you extract, what you scale, and how fast you grow. You might meditate before meetings, but are your profits still tied to someone else's struggle? That's not to say all success is immoral, but it is to say that true ethical wealth requires something deeper than good branding and an annual donation. It means questioning the foundation, not just polishing the exterior. It means asking, is my success possible without someone else losing? And if the answer is no, then what am I willing to do about that? Some will say that's too extreme, that you can't change the system, so why bother? But isn't that just convenient apathy dressed up as realism? Ethical wealth, if it's real, isn't about being perfect. It's about being aware. It's about using your position to challenge what helped you rise. It's about transparency over perfection, redistribution over performance, accountability over applause. Because wealth, when hoarded, corrupts. But wealth, when used with context and conscience, can support something better. The goal isn't to feel guilty. The goal is to feel responsible, not just for how much you earn, but for how it affects others, for what your growth demands, for what your choices ripple into. So is ethical wealth possible? Not in the way it's sold to us, not as a clean, tidy thing that fits into a TED Talk, but maybe in pieces, in effort, in small acts of resistance inside a system that rewards blindness. Maybe ethical wealth is less about how much you have and more about how bravely you interrogate where it came from and what you do with it. Because real integrity isn't found in success that looks good. It's found in success that feels honest, even when no one's watching. Especially when no one's watching. Maybe the problem isn't ambition. It's the story we attach to it. The lie that everyone starts at the same line. That failure is always your fault. That success is proof of morality. But what if true success isn't just about getting ahead, but also about looking around, about understanding the system, not just surviving it? You don't have to give up on growth, just give up on the guilt. Because in a world where inequality is real and luck is a factor we never count, maybe the most ethical thing you can do isn't to rise above, but to rise with awareness. Not to escape the system, but to question it. Not to be another success story, but to be a human story worth telling. If this made you pause, good, that's the point. Share this with someone tired of toxic grind culture. Drop a comment. What's the biggest lie you've been told about success? And what kind of success actually feels true to you? Subscribe for more videos that deconstruct modern myths with irony, honesty, and a little philosophy. Because thinking clearly might just be the most radical thing you can do in a world selling clarity by the click.